What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. And more importantly, welcome back to our season preview series, the series where we're breaking down all 30 NBA teams before the start of the regular season. In this series, we go extremely in-depth. We're going to talk about everything from rotations to depth charts. What's their salary cap look like? What kind of trade assets do they have? What did their offseason look like? Trades they could make. Everything that you need to be ready for the start of the regular season. And in this video, we've got the young Charlotte Hornets. So hey, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. All right, let's get into it. All right, y'all, as you can see, there is a lot to get into in this video, but that's why we've got our trusty season preview spreadsheet, whatever the hell you want to call this thing. I like to build these spreadsheets to kind of help me like articulate and visualize everything that I do in these series. For those of you that are new to the channel, if you want access to the spreadsheet, it's a pretty easy process. All you have to do is leave me a comment saying something along the lines of like, I would like access to the spreadsheet. From there, I'll give you a link to join my Discord. Hop on my Discord and shoot me a DM there. Once you shoot me a DM there, I'll give you access to the spreadsheet. It's really nice, really simple. Helps out the algorithm. You get a spreadsheet. Everybody wins. Plus, you're on the Discord now. We're having a bunch of cool conversations on there. It feels like more and more people are starting to join, so that's awesome. We all need a place to talk about basketball in this boring point in the season. But anyway, the Charlotte Hornets. So I've been pretty public on my channel talking about a couple franchises in particular, which like I don't think it's necessarily a surprise, but as a guy that's like worked within the league and everything and has friends actively playing in the league and coaching in the league and stuff like that, I'm giving you guys some insight here. The Washington Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets, those two franchises are the ones that players least want to play for and people don't want to work within. That's typically how it has been for the last, I can't even count how many years. These two franchises have really struggled with certain things like implementing like cohesive culture that's even just good for people to work in outside of play basketball, and they've struggled making certain decisions, things like that. Players have not always found great opportunities to grow and get better, things like that, and they haven't won many basketball games, right? So these two teams have kind of been looked at as like poverty franchises in the NBA. Like they're kind of just out there existing, doing their own thing, right? At least the Hornets have some cool uniforms in my opinion. I can't stand the Wizards uniforms, but that's just me being picky. I have no sense of style. I dress like this every single day, so I have no place to speak. But anyway, Charlotte Hornets had another rough season last year. 21-61 last year, and unfortunately, their star player in LaMelo Ball, who, let's be honest, LaMelo Ball is a phenomenal basketball player. Again, he was hurt for most of last year, but they have a different young player that's up and coming now in Brandon Miller, and that's very exciting. And most importantly, because I know you Hornets fans are already starting to get defensive and everything, the Hornets are under new like ownership and new GMs, and like just new people are in control right now. It's a whole new regime, and I'll say it's been a very short amount of time, but this franchise looks like it's doing some smart things. Like I've been watching it and I'm like, okay, like they're making some smart moves right now. They're not doing typical Charlotte Hornets moves. So Hornets fans, we might be going in the right direction right now. Y'all might be going the right way. So this might be a fun video for you in that sense, because like I'm observing that stuff, like I'm seeing it. They're talking about new culture and everything and trying to establish a place for people to grow and be cohesive. They got rid of a lot of problematic players, and we'll talk about some other ones. I know you guys can read what's on the screen and everything right now. We'll get there. But anyway, I think there's room to be excited about the Charlotte Hornets team going forward. I think they've got a good idea of what they want to do, and personally, like as a former player development coach, like I'd be excited to try to develop a lot of these players. I think they're very interesting. So where are we looking right now? I'd say as far as like an outlook into like this next like season and everything like that, franchise status wise, I've got the Charlotte Hornets as growing. I've got a couple different categories to pick from here when talking about teams. I'd say the Hornets are definitely in a growing stage. Like, okay, we've got some young talent now at this point. We've established we've got some good young players on this team. Let's start to try to win some basketball games now, and I think that'd just be good for this franchise in general. This franchise just doesn't even appear in the playoffs very often. I mean, when's the last time like you realistically remember that team being there? Is it like Kemba Walker, Al Jefferson, like Charlotte Hornets days? Like is that the last time I remember them being there? Was that team even in there? Or am I thinking of an earlier like Charlotte Bobcats team? I remember that team playing against the Heat the one time and just getting obliterated. But like this team historically just kind of sucks, unfortunately, right? And so one of the best things that you can do to improve a culture and get people to buy into certain things, start winning some basketball games, right? So you should be doing everything that you can right now to start winning some basketball games. Tanking in this year's draft and everything, look, is this team going to win the finals this next year? Spoiler alert, probably not. So I wouldn't worry about not having a lottery pick and everything like that. Like, You're probably going to find your way there regardless, Charlotte Hornets fans, like just a little bit of a spoiler, but I think you should be looking at this team as a growing season, like figuring out who fits and everything long term, seeing what kind of talent do we have in some of these younger guys, and kind of going from there. Let's talk about some goals, though, for this season. I always like to bring up goals at the beginning of the video because as we get in through the rest of these tabs and we're going through other things, I want you guys to keep these ideas in mind as we're moving through them. So first goal, stay healthy. I know it's an easy one, right? Like, well, easy in the sense of me explaining it. Like, this team just needs to stay healthy. Obviously, Mark Williams, very injured last year. LaMelo Ball, your franchise player, potentially was out most of last season. And it's just hard, right? When some of these talented young players that you have just keep finding ways to get hurt and everything. So I'd like to see what happens if we could keep everybody on the court together. That'd be very cool. Be competitive. I already talked about that, right? Just starting to win some basketball games. Like, don't be an embarrassment on the court. Don't be one of those teams that gets laughed off the court. I've talked about this a lot with like the Pistons. You need to win some basketball games because it's going to stunt your growth otherwise. These players, like, these are real human beings at the end of the day. Some of you guys think that you should just be able to turn this shit on every single day. When you do like 100 hours a week of just basketball, like I've done and like these guys have done, like, it really starts to suck when everything about your job, everyone tells you suck all the time. Like, that's just, it's hard, right? So for these guys to develop, they need to not suck. They need to be competitive at the very least. They can't be a laughing stock. It's too hard to develop talent otherwise. I promise you that is 100% the truth. Even for my business nowadays, I have to consult with these teams about this stuff. Like, this is the stuff that I tell them because I know it works, right? Funny enough, I spent most of this day interviewing people for potential like intern spots with my company and everything like that, and those are some of the things that we talked about, is like, how do you help teams implement stuff like this? But anyway, grow Terrence Mann and grow Brandon Miller along with others. But these two in particular, I find them to be really, really interesting players, and I think that they could be long-term starters for this team. So obviously the Brandon Miller one, you're not surprised by. Maybe the Mann one you are a little bit, but we'll talk about him more in the video. Obviously other young players to grow on this team, but just want to get some development, right? We haven't seen a lot of development from this franchise. Let's get some guys growing as soon as they get onto our team, right? We need to see that. Normally, I only do 3 things, but I wanted to add a 4th goal here, and that's trade Miles Bridges. Without going into too many details and stuff, we all know Miles Bridges has a bit of a checkered past. And before you guys get in your comments, because I know a lot of you Hornets fans want to get in the comments about this already. I know he's a guy that can score 20 points for you, and you haven't had many of those guys before. I promise you, we just spent this whole time talking about culture and everything. I've just heard enough about the guy and everything and some of the things that he's done. I think you just got to get rid of the old regime. I'm not here to tell you that he's a bad basketball player by any means. I don't want to tell you he's a bad person either necessarily, but look, like, the dude's not helping himself in a lot of ways, and we just can't have that on this team that's really trying to clean up its image. We just can't. You need to do something else with him. So I'm just telling you that that's what needs to happen. I know I'm going to see some comments saying, oh, like, he gets his another chance at things. You need to look at the better and overall good of just moving on and having a clean slate from things. You just have to. The crimes and stuff that dude has done, like, it's just worse. It just is, okay? So anyway, let's move on, though. Let's talk about everything that happened this offseason for them, because it was an interesting offseason. Alrighty, here we go. Here is the Hornets offseason in one pretty quick little picture. So for those of you that are new to the series, I always break this down into a couple different categories. We got drafted players. You understand what that means, right? Player departures, guys that were on the full-time roster last year, no longer on it. And then players brought in, guys that were in the NBA but just have joined the team now through other means, right? So we're going to talk about each of these, and we're going to start off with the drafted players because they're at the top of the screen. So we have, okay, I've messed up this guy's name so many times, and I know I've been taught it so many times. Tajon Salon, I believe. Salon. I don't know. I've watched a ton of film on this guy, though, and I still can't say his name, but I know enough about his game. I really, really liked this pick. I thought he was going to fall a lot further in the draft, and I think a lot of us did. Nobody saw him going necessarily that high, but I can't fault the Hornets for it either, because here's the thing. This last draft class, there was so much, like, parallel talent, meaning guys that if you put them in 2K, they'd be, like, the exact same overall. And, like, I know I evaluated guys like 3 through 11 as basically like the same thing. So I'm like, so basically just take the position that you need is how I evaluated it. So it made it very hard for teams to like trade places. So even though Salon or Saloon, however you say it, I'm going to call him Salon. So even though Salon was projected to go like 11, 12, 13 and them picking him as high as they did, like I can't really fault them for it because it was too hard to trade. And they're like, if this is their guy, this is their guy. And personally, I like Salon. I do like Salon a lot. In this draft class, when we looked at it, especially me and like other like NBA style like scouts and stuff like that, you look at it and you go, Okay, I don't see much upper end talent. Guys that I could say, I could see this guy being an all-star one day. I just didn't say that out of many guys. Salon, I said I could. I was like, this is one of the few guys, and he's far away from it right now. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I can see it. This guy has a phenomenal build to him. He's a huge dude, broad shoulders and everything, and he moves so well. So you're like, okay, you've got this big-ass dude that can play the forward position right now. He's starting to show some life from, like, behind the three-point arc right now. Like, there was times where he got, like, really hot from three, and he played overseas and stuff last year. There were times where he got ice cold. But some of the ways he moved with and without the basketball, phenomenal stuff. Stupid good athlete and everything, should play above the rim well. I think him playing next to LaMelo Ball this early in his career is going to be awesome for him, because he can just be a rim runner right now, and he can be a guy that's like cutting without the basketball. Like, you know, LaMelo is going to find him, right? You know he will. That's his whole thing, right? So just having these big athletic dudes that can run with him, dunk the ball, and like space out afterwards and stuff, just be active. I think this is awesome. This could be a long-term great draft pick for the Hornets. If they can develop him correctly, I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be hard for him to get on the court early just because there's a lot of other people at his position right now, but that's okay. Like, he's a project right now. Like, you shouldn't expect to see him much on the court this year. Let him get better. Let him develop, right? Like, maybe send him down to the G League for some points this year. Like, look, that's just going to happen with a lot of the guys in this draft class. A lot of guys are going to go down to the G League, but I love this pick. I absolutely love this pick for the Hornets, so shout out them. They also took KJ Simpson, guard out of Colorado, just a more mature veteran guard. Sounds like he's going to be on a two-way deal this year, so won't see a ton of him this year, especially when they have a lot of other guys at that position as well that they want to play. But hey, developmentally, maybe you turn him into like a nice backup point guard at some point. Hard to say. Talking about player departures, you really didn't lose anything all that important. And look, like, this team won 21 games. You can make the argument who was really important on this team last year, right? But overall, you cut Bertans, right? Who at one point, this dude was like the most lethal power forward ever. Like, this dude was sniping things. And then after he got his contract, dude just like was not the same after that. And coincidentally, he was on the Wizards or whatever. So kind of fell off. He's just been kind of bouncing around as a trade piece and stuff. He's out of the NBA now, is what it is. We have Pokusevski, former first-round pick and everything, a unicorn-type player again, 7-foot dude, was able to kind of move nicely, shoot a little bit, but like, his game was never really, at least in my opinion, like, never going to translate to the NBA that well. It's just, I don't know, man. If you're going to play this type of basketball where you're the unicorn type, you still have to be able to play the forward position first. And when you can't do that, you just can't do that, right? Like, you need a guy that's going to be big and strong like Porzingis at the same time, that can be a rim defender, that can guard centers. It was never going to happen with Poku. So I don't know. I never really liked that pick or whatsoever. Like, wish him the best overseas and everything, but I have to imagine that's probably it for him NBA wise. And then we have Bryce McGowan's younger guy for them, athletic wing, wasn't really getting a ton of burn necessarily on this team. I personally don't think anything that crazy talent-wise. I think he's kind of one of those guys that hasn't quite figured out the game of basketball yet personally, but he's got a lot of athletic ability, which is cool. But again, you lost 3 guys that weren't contributing to you at a high level, and that's totally okay. And who'd you bring in? The first one, great addition. You ended up getting in on the NBA's first ever like 6-team trade, or however that worked out, and you stole Josh Green from the Mavericks as a part of the Klay Thompson trade. Josh Green, I love for this team for a lot of different reasons. One, I just like him as a talent, 3-and-D type dude, right? Like, the three-point shot wasn't like phenomenal for him last year, but he knew how to play within a system and play around very ball dominant players. Like, that was very apparent. So putting him next to LaMelo, cool. It's like playing with Luka again, right? Makes a ton of sense. But most importantly, he knows how to cut without the basketball, which is something that's so hard for wings. So when LaMelo's doing his thing, he's creating, or someone else is creating, he's always moving without the basketball, looking to get a quick dump off and a good lay because he's good at the rim, right? So that's a great thing to have. It's great to have a big, strong, athletic wing to add to your team. And I think most of all, he just plays with so much energy and hustle, which was awesome to watch in the playoffs last year. Like, that's just something we need. We talked about building a culture of winners and stuff like that. Like, Josh Green's going to be one of those dudes that goes out and just plays winning basketball. So perfect. We love that for this team. We love having Josh Green on this team. This might be one of my favorite things that the Hornets did this offseason. They went out and signed Taj Gibson, which basketball-wise does not matter like at all. Like, playing basketball on the court does not matter. He's going to be the last guy coming off the bench, right? Taj Gibson's very old now. He's been in the league for forever. I loved him as a Chicago Bull and everything. This is what the Hornets have never done before. They've never taken the time to go find that more veteran player to add to the back of the bench that all the smart teams go out and get, right? Especially when they have younger talent and stuff like that. Think the Spurs, who they've had Victor Wembanyama for 1 year, right? In this young core, and they're like, okay, we need to go get Harrison Barnes, Chris Paul, etc., right? We need to go get these guys to help develop them, right? You need these vets. So they went out and got one. Good job, Charlotte Hornets. Thank you. You guys are doing the right things. Taj Gibson is going to be an on-court coach for them. You need an on-court coach on the team, right? So he's going to be that guy. He's not going to let anybody slack off or anything. Like, real blue-collar dude. He's going to mess people up in practice, right? That's what he's going to do. He's going to talk shit. He's going to toughen up the young guys. Like, perfect addition to this team. Good job, Charlotte Hornets. Thank you very much for doing that. I want every team to succeed. I hope you guys know that. I want every team to succeed. And so just seeing moves like this, it makes me happy. It gives me hope that I'm like, okay, Hornets fans, y'all might be doing something. Like, I'm not going to buy it yet, but I like what you're doing. Let's go talk about the rest of the roster and everything. Alrighty, y'all. Y'all know this is my favorite tab on the entire spreadsheet. This is basically my ideal offseason series spreadsheet, but just brought over here because it's got a lot of different purposes. The sheet lets us look at a bunch of different things. Obviously, we can take a look at the current roster and everything. What kind of salary situations are we working with, options, things like that. We can look at the team's overall salary cap space, which I think is very valuable to know. Lets you know what moves you can and can't make this year. What kind of draft picks are you working with? What can we do? What kind of assets do we have to move? Like, are we trying to get more? What's the situation? Then depth chart overall, right? Just get a look, like, let's visualize the team a little bit. How are we feeling about things? So it's good for a lot of those different purposes. I always like to start off with the draft picks though, because I don't know, I just think that's a good way to start off by talking like, okay, what kind of tradable, non-tangible assets do we have, right? So let's start off there. So the first thing you're going to notice when you get on here is you're going to be like, okay, there's no 2025 first round pick. They most likely will get their first round pick next year. I'm pretty sure it's lottery protected wherever it's at. So don't worry about that. Some of the picks not shown have protections on them or they're swap rights or something like that. These are like tradable assets in essence. So there could be more picks and stuff like that. So don't sweat it. It is going to be important for this team to have a 2025 pick next year. You guys have heard me say it in all these videos. The 2025 class is looking very, very good. Teams are going to want to have those picks for a multitude of reasons. Is this team going to be in the playoffs next year? It's a debate, right? It is going to be a debate, but for the decent chance that they're not, you're going to want to have one of your lottery picks, because if this team could all of a sudden acquire a Cooper Flagg, a VJ Edgecombe, a Dylan Harper, something like that, holy cow, we're in a whole new position now, right? And obviously there's just a chance that this team just bottoms out because it wasn't that good last year either, right? So you're going to want to have that pick. So that's important. You got a couple second round picks too. As this team gets more expensive, it's going to be important to have a couple second round picks always, right? Because that's a good way to fill out the back of your roster when you're a contending team. This team has some second round pick storage like that. That's awesome. This team also has just all of its picks going forward, right? So that's amazing. That's what we want to see out of a team like this. Like, they've got the assets to move when they need to move them. And they also have a couple extra ones too. Like, they have this Heat 2027 pick that could be valuable to someone, right? Because the odds that the Heat are in the lottery, not that high, right? That team doesn't fall into there very often. They're going to have this Mavericks pick almost certainly in 2027, right? So you've got some good things going on here. I think they're in a great draft position. They've got the assets that they need to. That fits a timeline, in my opinion. So I feel good about that. I think that's a great spot for them to be in. If we can talk about salary cap space, this is always it's always the fun one to talk about, right? The numbers behind the game and everything, because we all want to just trade all the star players all the time, but there's rules. So anyway, 4 levels to NBA salary cap. If you guys have been watching my videos, you guys know the explanation I'm going to go into in this. Let me know in the comments. Do y'all skip over this? Y'all let me know. If I don't see any comments about that, then I guess that's also an answer, isn't it? So for those of you that want deep explanations as to all these, go watch the first video or two in this series. It's the Celtics and Grizzlies videos. I go into way more depth about what all of these mean. But in short, here's your rundown. Cap space, you guys understand that. That's the basic cap line. Once you cross that, you can only sign players for minimum contracts, right? That's how that works, unless it's your own player. That's something you always have to remember. You can always sign your own player for whatever, right? Whatever you want to give them, right? And then luxury tax. Once you cross that one, meaning once this hits 0, your team is going to just get way more expensive to operate in general. Then we have our first and second apron, newer things to the NBA. These are things that the NBA has added because it's sick of star players being traded all the time. It's not good for fan numbers. Players or fans just aren't quite as interested in teams. We've seen statistically when players get moved more often, it just gets harder to follow and stuff. People don't actually like it that much, and I tend to be in that boat as well. So they've added these in place to be like, hey, really good basketball teams that cost a lot of money, because all championship teams cost a lot of money to run, unless you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, because they're just geniuses over there. But Anyway, once you cross these aprons, the NBA is basically locking you down. They're like, nope, you're just not going to get to really play and move players at all. We're going to make it really, really impossible for you to do so. Like, you can do it, but otherwise you're just going to have to tear your team down. Like, that's how it is. You're just going to have to tear it down. So, but even then, all the other teams are working under these implications as well. So it's hard to even tear your team down. Like, just look at the Chicago Bulls. Like, nobody wants to because they're like, well, we don't want to enter into the second apron or something like that, right? So a team like the Hornets could be really valuable to people as they have so much room before they even hit luxury tax this year that teams are going to be calling them to be like, hey, can you be a third team in this? We'll give you a draft pick or something if you take on this like bad contract for us or something like that. And that could be a very big way for them to be contributors in the trade market this year, or maybe even steal an interesting young player or something, because they could be like, yeah, we'll take on your bad contract, but you got to give me so-and-so, right? You got to give me so-and-so. I mean, they even made a decent move last year acquiring Trey Mann. At one point, I think I called him Terrence Mann earlier in the video. That's ringing in my head right now. That is not what I meant to call him. I don't know a Terrence Mann. Maybe I'm just tripping. But anyway, Trey Mann, like they acquired him in a deal where they were like, they were giving up Gordon Hayward and things like that, right? And so they were like, okay, yeah, like we'll take this pick or whatever, but we also give us Trey Mann. Give us Trey Mann as well. OKC's like, all right, fine, you can have Trey Mann. Now all of a sudden, Trey Mann looks like a decent little player. So there's ways you can maneuver with that stuff, right? But anyway, let's talk about the rest of the current roster. All right, so we all know LaMelo Ball, right? He's one of the most fun players to watch in the NBA, right? When he's on the court, fun things are going on, right? And dude's been flashy. He's been in the spotlight since he was a freshman in high school, right? Like, we all know about LaMelo Ball. We know all the good things he can do on the court. We could talk about the maturity levels and everything being a big question, right? I mean, when you've been a star as long as he has, a Hollywood kid and everything, it's hard, right? I mean, I think that's going to be a big problem. I know I've seen some people be like, oh, you criticize Miles Bridges for his crimes. LaMelo Ball's had things too. There is a big difference between what these two have been accused of criminally. There is a very large difference, and if you don't know that difference, your morals are in question to me. But anyway, LaMelo Ball's an awesome player. His ankles, not so much. What do I mean by that? His ankles just keep giving out. I don't know if it's the Big Baller brand shoes or what, and I'm joking right now. I don't know what's actually wrong with him. I'm not a doctor, but has trouble staying on the court. His max contract has kicked in now and everything. We need this guy to stay on the court somehow. I don't know what needs to happen. I mean, there's always things you can take, or not. I'm not saying like drugs or anything. I'm saying like there's always like methods that you can incorporate into yourself to make yourself stronger, less susceptible to injuries. They need to be doing everything possible to do that because they need him on the court, right? They just do. He's that good of a basketball player. So need LaMelo Ball in the court. We talked about Miles Bridges. I don't want to go into too much detail on him because, like, yes, he's a nice basketball player and everything. Can certainly help teams win basketball games. I don't think it's worth keeping him on this team. I'd rather him just go get a fresh start somewhere else. I think that's best for him, and I think that's best for the organization overall, so I'm going to leave it there. Grant Williams was a guy they acquired for P.J. Washington last year. If we want to talk about guys that didn't develop in Charlotte, it was P.J. Washington. Then as soon as he got out of Charlotte, people were like, oh, this guy's a really good basketball player. And I had no idea. I didn't think P.J. Washington was that great at all. And now you're like, oh, there you go. And funny enough, Grant Williams was having a really poor season with Dallas, and that's why they traded him so quickly into his new contract. But he got to Charlotte, and we can take a look at the numbers really quickly, but Grant Williams had a nice 29 games for this team, 14 points a game, given LaMelo was out for most of those, so the scoring's going to be a little inflated, but like 5 rebounds, 3 assists. The turnovers were a little bit high, shot at 37% from 3 from 4 a game on a team that wasn't really running a great offense. Fun fact, the Charlotte Hornets led the league in isolations last year. Why? Right? Why? More than Dallas. Like, more than Dallas. Can you believe that? Who was doing it? LaMelo was hurt the whole year. And they had traded Terry Rozier. Who was doing the ISOs? I'll tell you who, unfortunately, was Brandon Miller a lot of times because he was just stuck with the basketball. I felt so bad for him. Eventually, they started being like, oh, we can run a pin down for you. And he was like, that would be great. And all of a sudden, dude's scoring just went up a ton. And he started learning how to finish at the hoop, coincidentally. But anyway, Grant Williams ended up making a pretty good impact on the team. Like, I don't know what the long-term fit is here, but good for him, right? We talked about Josh Green a little bit. Brandon Miller. I loved Brandon Miller coming out last year, and I'm glad that he had such a good rookie season. Like, his rookie season flew so under the radar, one, because he was in Charlotte, right? And it was just kind of a nonsense season for them. But also, Wemby was so good that nobody cared about any of the other rookies. Like, I feel like the Thompson twins went, like, so under the radar, and, like, Brandon Miller especially had such a phenomenal rookie season overall. Look at Brandon Miller, 17 points a game as a rookie. Do you guys know how hard that is on a team that's not even running, like, a cohesive offense, and it's the Charlotte Hornets? He's got nobody else around him, and the efficiency numbers are pretty solid. Like, yes, he had a big problem finishing at the rim early on in his career, and we'll look at the shooting chart in a second, but like, overall, like, dude started figuring it out towards the end of last season. And then 37% from three on almost 7 a game from your 6'9" rookie small forward. Oh my goodness. Do you know how much every team wants to sign up for that? That's amazing. About 83% from the free throw line. Perfect. We love that, right? Dude started to figure it out a little bit defensively and everything, played with good energy. He's a good athlete. We love Brandon Miller. Here's Brandon Miller's shot chart from last year, and if you guys have been watching me talk about this for a little bit, I hope you guys are starting to already beat me to what I'm about to say right now. That's the goal of coaching at the end of the day, is to not be needed anymore. So when you look at this shot chart, what do you see? Well, we see some hot zones, right? Like, he was good from three and everything, not as good from this side of the court, but what are we noticing? These aren't hugging the line. We want these hexagons to be hugging the line. See how far out he is? This is what happens when you're running a bad offense and you're having to chuck up shots at the end of shot clocks. This is what happens. A lot of these mid-range shots as well, right? Like, that's him just trying to create anything, right? Because the team's not running anything. So while he was actually pretty efficient from a lot of these places, like, not the greatest thing in the world, and he was ice cold from around the rim to start the year. It ended up getting a little bit better, though. And again, a lot of this started getting better once, like, you know, they're running some of these pin down actions for him and some floppy actions and stuff, like even with like Grant Williams, and he's coming around those and he's hitting all these threes. I feel like a lot of the drives ended up initiating from this side, where like he's getting that pump fake off thing and people have to close him out, because I mean, he's hitting these shots and then he's getting to the rim and stuff like that, and that's when you can get a continuation of offense and things like that. It's a great start for the guy, right? Cody Martin, twin of Caleb Martin, he's a solid contributor for the team overall. I don't know, again, the long-term fit of him. I feel like some of his numbers are a little bit inflated because somebody has to, and by that I mean like the 7.5, 8 points a game, which is nice, but the efficiency is pretty poor. Pretty poor at the rim, pretty poor from behind the arc. I mean, you're not even hitting your free throws. Unfortunately, you're turning the ball over half the amount of time you're getting assists. I don't know. I think it's kind of a tough one. He's got 2 years left on like $8 million. Maybe it could be a trade piece for someone because he's pretty solid defensively, but is what it is. Micic, a guy that was awesome to watch in the Olympics this year. Shout out to him and the Serbian team. Let's clap it up for them. They had a phenomenal run. He does have a team option at the end of this year, but I love Micic on this team. Again, he was part of the OKC deal or whatever that came over, and he's just like a quality veteran dude, right? Like, he's that foreign older point guard that's not going to mess around with anything. He's going to make great passes. He's not going to score a ton unless it's that little mid-range jump shot that he loves at the nail or whatever. So he's going to shoot that all the time, but he's just going to be a quality backup point guard that's going to facilitate and run things well. Love having a guy like that on the team. Talked about Saloon a little bit already. Nick Richards, one of the most underrated players in basketball, and I'm telling you this for a fact. Nick Richards could start on a lot of NBA teams. I really, truly believe that he could. Like, I'm not saying he's like Nikola Jokic, right? But, like, this guy can run, jump, dunk, play defense. Awesome. I love the energy that he comes in with, and his contract is so nice. It's so easily tradable. I've been saying, like, how have the Warriors not, like, made a trade for this guy in some capacity yet? Like, this is the guy that they need on their team. He's cheap. He's a good center. Like, I like him a lot. He starts in a lot of spot minutes for them and stuff like that. He's not going to, like, drastically change your team by any means, but I think he's just a really forgotten player in the NBA. I actually sat down on so you guys can figure out my identity. I don't say my actual name on YouTube, but, like, if you actually just, like, go and do a little bit of research, I guarantee you could find out who I am. I was on like an NBA coach's podcast maybe like 3 months ago, maybe it was. I can't even remember. Maybe 3 or 4 months ago. We were talking about underrated players, and we talked about Nick Richards or whatever, and those coaches were telling me like, oh man, you know you're in the film weeds when you like Nick Richards. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, no, we understand. We completely understand why. And all of us coaches agree, like this guy like understands what he's doing on the court, like really, really well, but he's just, he doesn't get utilized a ton here. And it's a system that doesn't really have any logic to it. So it's kind of whatever, but that's my Nick Richards rant. Trey Mann, you've heard me talk about him a couple times in this video already, was kind of a forgotten guy in OKC, came over to Charlotte here, and all of a sudden, like, showed a little bit of value, right? We can take a look at just his numbers from his time, 28 games with OKC, or with Charlotte, 12 points a game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds for a guy that's like 6'2", 6'3". We love to see that. 36% from 3, very respectable, and about 4 a game. Again, this team really struggled at getting to the rim and stuff like that. Teams kind of sagged in on them a lot of times, so I'm not tripping about them not being able to finish yet. And he's a young guy. How old is I had to actually click on him. How old is Trey Mann at this point? He's 22 only, so very, very young player. But he just showed like a lot of nice offensive instincts last year. Like, he was able to create a little bit. He was able to play without the basketball, and that's important for this team because LaMelo Ball is going to have the ball a lot, but he can also guard twos and stuff like that. So having another guard that can maybe guard point guards at times, right, that can also play with or without the basketball, basketball, that's exactly the type of player you need next to a LaMelo Ball and a Brandon Miller, to have that next ball handler. Because here's the thing too, Brandon Miller shouldn't probably become like a ball handler. Like, it's not really in his skill set, and he's so good without the basketball. Like, and there's just not many players that can do that, so we want to encourage that as much as possible. So Trey Mann being able to do what he does, perfect complement to LaMelo Ball. I like it a lot. I want to see it developed. I want to see some growth in it. I think it's really, really interesting. I've even seen like a clip of like the Hornets like GM talking about, like, they were talking about like draft prospects or whatever, and they're saying like, oh yeah, well, how is so-and-so going to fit in next to Melo, Miller, and Mann, right? And so like that's how they're thinking about this guy, right? Like they're like, yeah, no, we recognize the talent and everything. New front office. I'm like, good job. Mark Williams, young center. He's my favorite type of center. Run, jump, dunk, block shots, rebound. Cool. Super athletic, super long. He's going to do what you need him to do. He's the perfect guy to have next to LaMelo. You always need that DeAndre Jordan type next to like a guy like LaMelo Ball. You need someone that's going to run the pick and roll with him, wait in the dunker spot. He's going to block shots, grab rebounds. He's not going to do anything outside of his job description. Super athletic, just waiting with his hands up at all times to dunk the ball. Great stuff. We love it. He was hurt most of last season, so I hope his athleticism is still okay. Seth Curry, the Curry back in Charlotte, following his dad's footsteps, right? Good vet to have on the team. That's what I'll just keep saying. You want vets like this on a team where you're trying to change the morale around. He's going to be able to hit some threes if you put him in the game, right? He's a Curry. That's what he does. Great stuff. Nick Smith Jr., young player for them last year, and last guy we're talking about here has a team option at the end of the year. I'm not the biggest Nick Smith Jr. fan. You guys probably watched my Rockets video pretty recently. When would that have been? Probably 2 days ago for you guys. Oh no, it's been a weekend, so no. But anyway, go back, watch my Rockets video. I talk about Jalen Green and like modern players coming into the game, playing too much AAU, not learning how to actually play basketball. That's Nick Smith Jr. falls into this as well. Now I want to give him credit. Dude shot the shit out of the basketball in his first season. Where's old Nick Smith Jr. on here? Yep, we got 51 games out of the dude. We got 6 points a game, and it's all from three, right? Only shot about 3 a game, but hit 43% of them. You can't deny that. Dude can shoot the basketball. That doesn't surprise me at all. It's everything else that he really struggles with right now. He turns the ball over. He's constantly out of position. He can't create for himself right now. You guys are going to be like, oh, I've seen him do these shake and bake like ISO moves. That doesn't work. That does not work in the NBA. Like, you just need more creativity than that. Like, these are the things that I've seen these kids do in AAU for so long, and you just have to trust me as a guy that's watched way too many AAU basketball games recruiting people. It's not it. Like, you're dancing in place. You're not going anywhere. I promise you, I'm ripping you clean. I promise you I am. But he's young. We hope that he can grow because he's got a lot of athletic ability and he's got a good shot on him. So we're going to try to grow him a little bit more, right? Again, at the end of the day, you can't deny dude was putting the ball in the hoop from 3. Everywhere else, he was incredibly ineffective, but I hope that they can put the right people around him to develop the talent that he has. So that's what I'll keep saying. Again, one of the modern players, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of their game or whatever, but obviously as a dude, I'm rooting for him. So that's what I'll have to say. But anyway, let's talk about depth chart really, really quickly because I think it's a nice one to look at. Looking at the point guard spot between LaMelo and Micic, you feel good. Trey Mann can also play there, which is awesome. So can Nick Smith Jr., honestly. So you've got a lot of like parallel between like the 1 and the 2 spot, guys that can kind of swap positions, switch a lot of different ball handlers that you can go to. Great stuff, right? Obviously, LaMelo Ball is just a great player. You look at the wing spot, Brandon Miller, we love. Josh Green, wonderful guy to have. There's probably a case to be made that Josh Green could very well start at the 2 as well if you want to go a little bit bigger. I definitely want to see that lineup in action. Don't get me wrong. Cody Martin, not the best option necessarily, so maybe a trade piece, right? Because we'd prefer not to be paying him around $8 million for his level of contribution right now. Looking at the forward spot, obviously Miles Bridges, very, very good basketball player. Long term, I'd like to just start Grant Williams, and then we can also get Saloon on the team or in the rotation a little bit earlier. I think that'd be great. I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot of people interested in Miles Bridges. And looking at the center spot, I love it. Mark Williams and Nick Richards, 2 great options. And then you got Taji Wu, man, who, as I've said, great guy to have on the team. We do have 1 roster spot left. There are like a couple guys on like Exhibit 10 deals and stuff like that, but we'll see what actually ends up happening with that last roster spot. Could be a good way if they're somewhat competitive this year, get someone on the buyout market or something and add another vet to the team to contribute. Could be a good way to do it. But all right, now that we have a sense of like all the assets and dudes on the team, let's do a couple mock trades and see what we can come up with. All right, so we're here on Fanspo. This is what we use to do all of our trades and everything, and I'm trying to think of a way to do a Miles Bridges trade. I'm just being honest with you guys. I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. And you know, I didn't even mention in this video, but like, the contract they gave him is so weird. they didn't need to give him this much money, and nobody was bidding for him because nobody in their right mind was gonna just like offer to sign this guy, right? Like, so the logic that a lot of people are saying is like, and this was like the one kind of questionable thing the new like frontier of the Hornets have done, is they're like, yeah, they gave him this contract so they can trade him, because it is somewhat of a tradable contract. Like, it's not egregious by any means, but it's like, it also just didn't need to be this much money. And I still personally think they just shouldn't have re-signed him. I don't know. I think it sets a weird precedent for things, but is what it is. Like, could this be something where the Miami Heat become involved, right? Because I could very easily see something like this happen. They just recently did a trade, right? Is this something where we can do a Duncan Robinson for Miles Bridges? They're a first apron team, so it's going to need to be more money than that, but like, how much more do we actually need to make up to make something like this happen, right? So let's just try this trade. They need to cut $7 million more from the team. That's going to be a tough one to accomplish. So this is where a Haywood Highsmith goes over there as well. And then what, like a Josh Richardson? Like, does that make things work a little bit? Okay, yeah. So like, this money actually works. And honestly, this isn't like the worst thing ever, because what we would do is we would just request a first round pick from these guys as well. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking this like 2029, like unprotected first or something like that, coming back to Charlotte. You get a first round pick for him. The reason it says the trade doesn't work is because it's like recently signed thing, so this would just happen later in the season. The Heat get another better basketball player that they want. They don't need Duncan Robinson. They've been trying to move his salary. The Hornets can absorb this salary and actually use a guy like Duncan Robinson, who would live off LaMelo Ball feeds, right? You had Haywood Highsmith, who's just going to be a good quality defender that you could put at the wing as well, maybe even at like a power forward spot right away. Josh Richardson, 1-year deal, another vet to have on the team. Maybe you buy him out or something like that, right? I don't know. But then you get a first round pick out of it too. Cool. He's off your team. You've brought in better culture guys and everything from the Miami Heat, right? You know that they've always got things locked down, right? Cool. Everybody's happy. I think that that's a decent first trade. Let's go try to find like a more niche one, though, that we can make. Okay, so here's the next thought I have. I want to maximize Nick Richards, right? Because, like, would it be nice to keep Nick Richards on this team? Yes. I also think we can get great value for him because there's a lot of teams that are really desperate, and the odds of us winning that much this year just aren't incredibly high anyway. So the Memphis Grizzlies need a center extremely bad. We all know that. So Nick Richards, you go over there. Who are we taking back? We can take back like a John Conchar or something like that, right? Just like kind of a solid player in that right mind, right? Then we go and we take some picks from them, right? We take like their 2025 first or something like that has like a top 8 protection or something like that. Like, if we're lucky, that's something we can do. I don't think we're getting that high of a draft pick for a Nick Richards, but I do think that we could get like a 2026 like lottery protected first, because we know that they're that desperate for a center and we know that he could probably start for them. So you lottery protect that thing, send that over to the Hornets. Like, tell me you wouldn't be excited as a Hornets fan to do something like this, right? Like, John Conchar, do what you're going to do with him. He's a very quality, like, utility knife type of player, right? So that's cool. And you get a lottery protected first from like the Grizzlies. That's a good use of assets just right there, right? And then maybe you go find another center or something to back things up. I mean, if you want to put Taj on the court, you can. You just can't put him on the court for too long. Dude gets tired nowadays. But I think those are a couple interesting trades, but let me know what trade ideas you guys got. And go on the Discord. We have a place for you guys to post them too, and we all comment on them and stuff, and I promise we do it respectfully. So anyway, let's go talk about rotations. Alrighty, rotation screen time. And, you know, I always put a question mark on this because I don't know what teams are actually going to do at the end of the day. This is just an exercise to be like, okay, where do we kind of want players' minutes to average out at, right? Because it's going to be more some nights, it's going to be less, right? But what's kind of the idea going in? Looking at the first 5, LaMelo, good young player, need him on the court as much as possible. 33 minutes, easy. Trey Mann, playing good starter level minutes. Let's see what we got in him. Give him 30. Brandon Miller, good basketball player, young guy as well. Same logic as LaMelo. Keep him on the court, 33 minutes. Miles Bridges, like, if he's going to be on the team, do it good. Put him out there, play. He is a good basketball player at the end of the day. I'm not going to tell you that he's not. 32 minutes, easy. Mark Williams, coming off of injury and everything, younger guy, and this is also assuming we have a Nick Richards on the team that we can also throw out there that's very quality. 27 minutes, love it. Josh Green, playing starter level minutes because he's a starter level type of player, getting him at least 25, first guy off the bench. Grant Williams, we saw the impact that he had last season and everything, being a good leader. 21 minutes, same for Nick Richards coming off here. Whenever Mark's not on the court, Nick is on the court. That's how we're treating him, right? And then I'm also only going 9 guys deep because I don't see the need to get like Saloon, however you say it, on the court right now necessarily. Same with Nick Smith. Cody Martin's there as an option at wing if you really need another one. But I think we have enough interesting options between like Miller and Bridges and Green and stuff like that. So I got Micic playing a nice 18 minutes as well as an extra ball handler, right? So smaller rotation, more compact, trying to win basketball games. That's what I see out of this team this year. Maybe add another guy that could jump into the rotation a little bit more obviously, or you move Miles Bridges. Saloon can come up and take up some of these Grant Williams minutes, right? Like, that's what I'm kind of seeing. But if we go take a look at like their actual lineup rotation minutes last year, like what was working for them and what wasn't. And one thing you're going to notice is there's not a lot of sample size from a lot of this because there was a lot of injuries. They were constantly shuffling things around, right? So what are we seeing? The only lineups of substantial minutes weren't good, unfortunately. And like, I'm not going to dive too deep into like what players were on the court for this because the roster wasn't very good, right? It just wasn't. And so you're not going to like get a positive like plus minus out of this necessarily, right? Because you weren't winning games and you were running a bad scheme, right? So I'm just not gonna care about that too much. But some of the lineups that we did see a lot of, we saw like Man with Martin and Miller, Bridges and Nick Richards. Okay, yeah, like you don't see a ton of like lethal shooting outside of like Brandon Miller or whatever. We know it was very ISO heavy, not reading too much into it, right? Again, you're seeing Bridges and Man with Miller and Richards in another rotation here. So interesting that group wasn't working that well together considering those are 3 potential starters for us, right? So we look into that a little bit. How can we improve that? And then again, the same kind of combo here of Bridges, Man, Miller. Wasn't working too well for whatever reason, right? And maybe that's because Terrence Mann's not really a true point guard enough and you need someone else to facilitate the offense. Maybe that's part of it, right? Looking into the best positive lineup they had with substantial minutes, we had Terry Rozier, who obviously got traded. Gordon Hayward's not there anymore, right? So just veteran guys that are more experienced in the NBA. That doesn't surprise me. The best lineup they had was LaMelo, Gordon Hayward, Brandon Miller, Mark Williams, Miles Bridges, more of a traditional starting lineup for them last year. Yep, not surprised at all. So, yep, a little bit better there. If we look at 3-man combinations, Gordon Hayward was towards the top with it with Brandon Miller and Mark Williams. It makes a ton of sense. Wasn't a ton of minutes, though, either way. Looking at some of the more negative ones, yeah, this Miles Bridges, Cody Martin, and Brandon Miller didn't work well together. Can't necessarily see why right off the bat, but Miles Bridges did have the ball a lot in a lot of ISO situations. When he came back last year, he was really trying to make a name for himself, hit a lot of big shots. A lot of them came from behind, like deep behind the arc and stuff, so maybe that just ruins some efficiency in itself for guys like Brandon Miller. But, I mean, you see combinations of Man working, though, a little bit more than other rotations towards the top here, so you like to think that there can still be some contributing factors if you add like another point guard to it. I mean, yeah, because even just right here, I see Man with Micic, right? Just looks like a little bit higher or something like that. So is what it is at the end of the day, but just looking at the rotations this year, like you should have a better basketball team than you had last season, so hopefully that alone helps them win some more games. But with that being said, let's go talk about predictions. Alrighty, y'all, here we are, the predictions page. This is always a fun one, right? So just a little bit of a recap as to what we have so far, in the East at least, because this is an Eastern Conference team. Celtics and Knicks at the top, right? I have seen nobody argue that. That's awesome. Sixers and Pacers in the middle, right? A little more conversation about that. Teams or people have been very curious what I'm going to do with these last couple like Eastern Conference spots. How many more Eastern Conference spots do we have? Is it just 3? It's the Hornets, Cavs, Bucks. 1, 2, 3. Why do I count 4? Who else am I missing? Bucks, Cavs, Hornets. Who have I? Oh, the Raptors. Haven't done the Raptors yet. I have that video prepped though and everything, so I just have to shoot it. But anyway, you guys want to see the rankings. So we have the Sixers and Pacers here in the middle. The Heat and Magic, some controversy here towards the middle, right? We've got the Hawks at the end of the play-in. We do have one more play-in spot left, so maybe the Hornets, right? We got the Bulls outside of it, and then the Pistons, Wizards, and Nets. I have had nobody argue with me on those, so glad we're all in agreement as to who the worst teams are. So where do we have the Hornets? They could appear in literally outside the playoffs, play-in, or towards the top of the playoffs. Drumroll, please. One of these days I'm going to stop doing this, but I don't know what else to do with this time period besides do a drum roll. We've got the Hornets as the 12. I know. This team's not that good. Like, unfortunately, it's just, like, not that great. And overall, the Charlotte Hornets just don't tend to win a lot of basketball games, right? I just don't believe it until I actually see it. Is there a lot of talent and potential on the horizon with hopefully some good moves being made? Yes, I totally think so, and I think they can win more games than they did last year, and that's unfortunately not that hard to do, but LaMelo stays healthy, right? That's a big question mark. We just haven't seen it yet. Hopefully they win some more games. Brandon Miller keeps getting better. I do see him as like a young Paul George or something like that. Awesome, right? We love that kind of game, right? Miles Bridges gets traded. That's probably going to make you a slightly worse basketball team, but probably better long term or something like that. We'll see. It's a lot of young guys, right? It's a lot of young guys that you got to trust. There's better basketball teams out there, unfortunately, at the end of the day. I mean, even just looking at the Bulls, right? They've got Zach LaVine and Vucevic, who are just, like, while they're not the most proven guys in the world, like, they're good basketball players, right? They're in the NBA. They can do it night in and night out. It's just different, right? So that's where I've got the Hornets, but this is where I leave things up to you guys now. You guys let me know down in the comments below where you see the Hornets. What kind of moves do they need to make this year? What are your thoughts on them? I love responding to comments. It's my favorite part of this job and everything. So leave me some, and obviously be respectful in the comments, right? If you guys are being annoying in there or just saying things to say things and you're just being like harassing people or whatever, I'm just gonna hide you from the channel. My channel isn't a place where you can be like everywhere else on the internet where people just say whatever they want. No, we're gonna be collaborative here, and we're gonna talk like somewhat intelligent people. So correct your grammar and things like that. It's important if you want to get a job one day. But anyway, seriously, I appreciate you guys as always. These videos are coming 5 days a week, every single week up until the start of preseason, and we're getting close there, y'all. We're on 24 of 30 teams. We're getting there. We're flying through this. But hey, appreciate you guys sticking with me all the time. Make sure you subscribe and everything, and we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks so much. Bye.